And, you know, I guess I don't want to spend too much time up here, but I guess as we all know, we're living in a pretty unique time in our nation's history, and it's important that we support candidates that are able to see the issues that are facing not just the nation, but the people of Georgia, and make sure they have a vision and a plan on how to take the state forward to, you know, to care for the welfare of the people of Georgia. And fortunately, we have somebody here like that tonight, and I think you're going to be really inspired by what he has to say and about the passion with which he speaks. And he is the candidate for Georgia, Ray McBerry.
Tony, thank you very much, and it's a real privilege to be here with you tonight. I'm sorry that we were a few minutes late. We drove all the way down from Atlanta, and it was a long drive down here, and we ran into a little bit of traffic here and there, but very glad to be here with you. Let me start off by asking you a couple of questions. How many of you here tonight would agree that we'd be better off with a little less federal government in our lives? And the follow-up question is, how many of you here tonight believe that we'd be better off with a lot less federal government in our lives? And that's usually the answer that I get just about everywhere we go. You know, the truth is about 90%, I would say, of what the federal government has its hands in today in our lives, it really has no constitutional right to be doing that. And isn't it also amazing that the very few things that the federal government is supposed to do, like defending our borders, it doesn't do. So I think we have a problem today, certainly with an out-of-control federal government, and I believe that there is one final, peaceful, constitutional solution to rein in that out-of-control federal government, and that is the 10th Amendment to the Constitution. It's states' rights and state sovereignty. I'm Ray McBerry, and I am a Republican candidate for governor. I'm a lifelong Republican. I'm also the only states' rights Republican in the race for governor. I've been speaking on the subject of states' rights for about a decade now, and unlike some of my opponents who just started talking about the subject of states' rights several months ago when it became a politically popular thing to do, I've been speaking on the subject of states' rights across America for the last decade now, many times in Republican Party meetings, but oftentimes in other civic clubs and organizations. And usually when I talk to people about the 10th Amendment and the ability of the states to limit the federal government in our lives, most of the time, the average people sitting there say, hey, why haven't we been doing this all along? It's something that we ought to be doing now. But invariably, there will be someone that's usually sitting way in the very back of the room, and they'll wait until the very end of the meeting, and then when it's question and answer time, they'll sit back there with their arms folded, and they'll say something like this. Well, Mr. McBerry, that sounds all well and good, talking about states' rights, but isn't that really just ancient history? Mr. McBerry, how does it feel to be out of touch with mainstream conservative discussion in America today? That's usually what those middle-of-the-road moderates, even in our own party, have to say when we talk about states' rights and state sovereignty. It's been very interesting, though, that over the course of the last several months, that has totally changed. The subject of state sovereignty is a major story across America in the news today, and you know, I'm very excited. We had made the decision that the theme of this campaign was going to be Georgia First. When we went down and filled out the paperwork the first of the year to run the campaign and get things going, at least the paperwork part of it, and we made the decision it was going to be a states' rights, state sovereignty-oriented campaign, because no other candidate in the race for governor is saying that they're willing to stand up on behalf of the people of Georgia and say no to the federal government. And so we made that decision before any of this talk about states' rights became popular, and really any of the stories from Texas or Montana or Alaska had hit the news. And so it's exciting to me to see that we've been talking about this for so many years, so long, as a way to rein in Washington. And all of a sudden, the Lord has just brought this subject to the forefront of American politics. The total climate in America is different, and I believe that the people of Georgia and the people all across America are looking for an answer to this out-of-control federal government that we have today. I want to tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'll talk to you some about states' rights, and about some of the issues that are facing Georgia. And then if you'd like to, at the end, I'll be happy to try to field any questions that you might have too. I am a native Georgian. I've lived here my entire life. I'm also a daddy. I have a little boy who's 8 years old. He's spending the night tonight and tomorrow night with Grandma and Grandpa back home. I'm originally from McDonough, which is about 30 minutes south of Atlanta. It's enough outside Atlanta that I do not consider myself an Atlantan. I consider myself a Georgian. And so I think I share those same traditional values that most Georgians share, at least the ones outside the Beltway of 285 around Atlanta. But I am a daddy, and that is part of the reason that I'm doing the things that I'm doing. You know, my worst fear is that I would be dead and gone, and my little boy would be here to have to fight this fight to regain our liberties that have been lost, with me not here to do my part in that battle. So I hope that if you have children or grandchildren or future children, that you have that same desire to restore our liberties that have been lost, so that our children and our grandchildren don't have to fight this battle themselves. I'm also a businessman. I own my own company. I produce radio and television commercials, mainly on the south side of Atlanta. Before that, I was a history teacher for about 10 years. I taught at both the high school and the college level. And from time to time, as the Lord opens a door, I occasionally preach when I get the opportunity to do that. I've never been called to pastor, but I do preach from time to time. And I've had several people in the last few weeks tell me, isn't that a dangerous combination to have running for governor? Somebody who's a history teacher and a Baptist preacher. So I don't know, maybe it is dangerous. Hopefully it's dangerous for the bad guys, though, that are out there trying to take our liberties. I think that Georgia is looking for someone who is a businessman, who is a daddy, who is a Christian, who is not just simply an elected bureaucrat, someone who understands the traditional values that most Georgians hold, values that transcend Republican and Democrat lines. I think for far too long we've given political candidates a pass because they either had an R beside their name or a D beside their name. I think we're at a point in American history, though, where most people are beginning to realize that that's not going to cut it. That's not going to be enough. And so I am not one of those middle-of-the-road moderate Republicans. I'm not a John McCain Republican. I am a staunch conservative. I am the only strong conservative in the race for governor and the only states' rights Republican in the race for governor. About 3.5 months ago, Congressman Tom Price, speaking at a group up in Marietta, Georgia, said this. He said, the most crucial issue facing Georgia's next governor would be the issue of states' rights and state sovereignty. Now, I want you to know that I like Congressman Tom Price from here in Georgia, but I don't personally think that Congressman Price is what I would consider a real conservative Republican. In my way of thinking, he's a little more to the middle of the spectrum there. But when we have even middle-of-the-road moderate Republicans saying that the crucial issue is states' rights and state sovereignty, I think all of us ought to take note of that. When people other than those of us that are strong conservatives are saying that, yeah, this is a problem, we've got to find a solution to this out-of-control federal government, I think that speaks volumes to the problem that we're facing today. And if you think we've seen all of the problems coming out of Washington, you ain't seen anything yet. Because as time goes on, there are only going to be more and more encroachments upon our liberties. I don't know if you're already familiar with it or not, but Congress has already passed the Real ID Act that's supposed to go into effect 1.5 years from now, that will require that every single state in the Union have pass a law in their own state requiring a national